So where did it all start to go wrong for Nigel Farage? And I say Nigel Farage rather than reform because, look, it might not be too late for reform as an entity. It might not be too late for Nigel Farage. I mean, look, who am I? I'm only a commentator. I don't, know the ins and outs of everything. And I certainly haven't got all the answers. I've got a lot of questions, but, having questions is easy. Having the answers is the hard part. But for me, Nigel's biggest problem, his biggest mistake has been his inability to listen to other people and to understand that before you win over your next batch of supporters, which is most definitely what he's been trying to do, he's been trying to attract former Tories. I mean, they've just recruited an ex-Lib Dem councillor today, an ex-Lib Dem councillor. I mean, really? Before he did all that, before he went after the masses, I'd have thought it'd have been a good idea to consolidate your core supporter base. Now, whether he likes it or whether he doesn't, and he clearly doesn't, Nigel's core supporter base also support Tommy Robinson. And I know Nigel has a problem with that, with squaring that circle in his head. And I get that. But the writing's been on the wall for some time now, the virtual expulsion of people like Ben Habib, Howard Cox, now Rupert Lowe. It's not going to work, Nigel. It's not going to work. And I tell you why it's not going to work. Because you're losing, in droves, you are losing your core supporter base. The people that were originally there in the first place to get you and your 5 MPs into Parliament in the first place. Now, look, you might be a lot more clever than I am. You might be thinking to yourself, well, those people are going to vote for me anyway because there's no one else to vote for. But that might not be the case for much longer. UKIP are on the rise, but let's put UKIP to one side for a moment. Clearly, there are things afoot. And it might be that you have a genuine party that is going to oppose you. I mean, look, Nigel, your supporters are centre-right supporters. That's where they sit. They sit in the centre to the right of politics. It's no good you going for those on the left and on the left of centre because they're never really going to be interested in you. They certainly don't want to be associated with us lot. And therein lies the problem. When I say where did it start, well, how far do you want to go back? Like I said, the expulsion virtually of Ben Habib, Howard Cox, Rupert Lowe, all your grassroots people up in Derbyshire that have been simply shat upon by those above. All the hard-working grassroots, reform supporters, voters, canvassers, the people that got you and your party where you are today, they're all in a state of despair. They've all left. They're all sick of it. They've all had enough. They don't trust you anymore. And if you were as clever as I thought you were, you would have had the ability not only to unite those people, but to rally them. That is what you needed to do. You need to issue rallying cries and appeals that appeal to the working class, that can stretch into the middle class and even above and beyond that. But we need the 16, 17 million Brexit votes to unite around the party. That could have been you. You had it all, Nigel. You had it all. It was all in the palm of your hand and you've blown it. I just don't understand it. And I'm still getting people writing to me now saying, oh, Paul, shut up, don't split the vote. For God's sake, how many more times? I'm a nobody. I'm not splitting anything. Listen to Talk TV. Listen to GB News. Listen to the radio. Listen to whoever you want to listen to. Go to other channels and listen to them. They are all pretty much saying the same thing, that Nigel has blown it. And he's blown it through, in my opinion, through arrogance, being stubborn, and a refusal to listen and to understand his core supporter base.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Now go away.
Now I have to wonder if he really does misunderstand his core supporter base, or if he's just trying to leave them all behind. Because I go back before the general election last year, I was contacted by senior members of Reform UK, who, by the way, have appeared on stage with Nigel Farage very recently during their rallies. I was contacted by that person. I had a long conversation with them in Plymouth, and the agreement was, without it being in writing as such, the gentleman's agreement, the handshake agreement, was that if I could get Tommy to ask his supporters to vote Reform, then once the election was over, they would bring us to the table, even if it was covertly. But at least we would be recognised. We'd have a say, we'd have a voice, we'd have an in, we'd have some respect.
My thoughts, I'm in Denmark at the minute on an island called Bornholm, but I've been watching Nigel Farage's performances and he is nailing it, yeah? Totally nailing it. So regardless of any previous comments about myself or any ill feeling I may have about certain things or the way they've been said, this is far bigger than me, it's far bigger than Nigel Farage, yeah? Our upcoming election. Do I think I would be telling people, and I know when I said this, when I put out a post recently, someone messaged saying, oh yeah, but you're forgetting what he said. No, I'm not forgetting what he said. I'm looking at the current climax of our country and Nigel Farage's win over the people, and he's putting across our arguments to the nation very skillfully and in a great way to win people over. So I recognise that, recognise there's election in 3-4 weeks, and there's only one option at that election, and that is Reform.
And what did we get? We were turned upon, rallied, you know, they didn't rally round us, they rallied against us. Richard Tice called us that lot. Nigel Farage made phony accusations about Tommy on the TV, telling the world that he was a woman beater. I mean, come on. It's not true. It's a lie. That was a lie. Has he ever apologised? No. I don't care how much you love Reform. I don't care how much you like Nigel Farage. And I don't care how much you dislike Tommy Robinson. It doesn't matter. He has never been accused of or convicted of hitting a woman. And Nigel Farage said he had. He said he had a record for, what was it? I can't say his exact words, but he has a record for violence against women, or there or thereabouts. Completely and utterly untrue, a complete and utter lie. Could he find it in his heart to apologise? No. The nearest we've got to anything with Nigel, where Tommy is concerned, is when he held his nose and said he shouldn't be in solitary confinement. But you could see even then, he was desperate to walk away from the reporter asking him the question. Now, nobody is expecting or asking Nigel Farage to open his arms up, open up the party to Tommy and to, you know, plenty of other people. That's their prerogative. I get that. It might not be politically the best move. I understand that. And I'm sure Tommy himself would understand that. In fact, I know he understands that. He's never wanted to be a part of Reform. Has he wanted to work kind of hand in hand for the good of the country? Then yes, the answer to that, in my opinion, would be yes, because Tommy is the bigger man. Tommy is prepared to look past his own ego, his own what's good for him, because he knows what's best for the country. That's why he's sitting where he's sitting right now today, in solitary confinement, because he's a man that's prepared to make sacrifices. And it appears to the core Reform supporter base today that Nigel Farage isn't a man that's prepared to make sacrifices. Not only is he not prepared to make sacrifices, he's not even prepared to compromise. And as I said in my video that I released just a while back, just yesterday, about people should be getting together now. This is a time for unity. As I said, Nigel had it all in the palm of his hands. He could have united us all, But no, instead of that, he went down the mainstream media route. He wants to appease the people that watch the BBC and Question Time. Quite why people from Reform even bother to go on Question Time is beyond me. They know what they're going to get. They know that the audience is rigged. They know the questions are loaded. They know they're going to be asked gotcha questions. Why do they even bother? Who needs the goddamn BBC anymore? Social media, our platforms are much bigger now than the mainstream media news outlets. Yes, they're important because they reach people who don't watch YouTube, and there are millions of them. But there are other ways to reach those people. Nigel Farage had an army of volunteers at his disposal, an absolute army. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that would have got out on the streets on a Saturday afternoon, leafleting, canvassing, talking to people, delivering leaflets, knocking on doors. He had it all. He had everything. But he's thrown it all over his shoulder, and it doesn't make any sense to me. I thought he was a lot cleverer, a lot more switched on, a lot more streetwise, clearly, than what he is. Where this is going to end up, your guess is as good as mine. Is it a shame? Oh, don't even go there. If anyone out there thinks that this pleases me, of course it doesn't. I don't want to see the centre-right vote become split. I've always preached unity. I've always wanted everyone to get together and come together and make this a success. But how can you make it a success when the leader keeps tearing up the rule book? It's a joke. There are still hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people out there right now that cannot join Reform. Now, I'm going to disagree with Ben Habib on one thing only am I going to disagree with Ben on. And by the way, wasn't he brilliant on talk radio? The one thing that I'm going to disagree on with Ben is that we should have a vote. The Reform membership should have a vote as to who they want to be the leader. Now, if that vote did take place, tell you what, Ben, I think Nigel would still win it. And you know why? Because he's built up an army of members who are mostly, or a large proportion at least, ex-Tories, a few ex-Lib Dems, and plenty of I'm a celebrity, get me out of here viewers that like Reform because they like Nigel. So I'm not convinced that Rupert would necessarily win a vote, a leadership race, with a vote from the membership. I'm not entirely sure that would happen because most of Nigel's sycophants are members of Reform. The real army of reformers, people like myself, we're not even allowed to join Reform. So we are where we are, we're at where we're at, and we can only wait and see how all this pans out. A lot of people are really depressed. I've been listening to the radio this morning, caller after caller after caller, saying how disappointed they are with Farage and Reform, etc. But what I would say is the only positives that can potentially come out of this is that before it can all be fixed, everything has to be broken. And I think we're right at that point right now. Everything with Reform is pretty much broken. It now needs to be repaired. How that's repaired, well, again, that's up to Nigel Farage. If Nigel Farage really wants to win the next general election, if Nigel Farage really is a man of the people, if Nigel really does put country before ego and himself, he would immediately reinstate Rupert Lowe. He would immediately give a senior position to Ben Habib. He would immediately get rid of Zia Youssef, and he would immediately embrace all of us lot and allow them to join the party. Then he'd be cooking. But right now, he's not even simmering. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. Be interesting to see if you agree or disagree. I'll see you soon.
be happy. It must be happy. It must be happy.